Welcome to the Fit 40 podcast, where we take all the confusing, conflicting fitness and nutrition information and break it down so that you can live your healthiest, strongest, most energized life. I'm your host, Brian Fitzsimmons. Let's get it started. All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back for another episode of the Fit 40 podcast. We have a special guest today. We have Stephanie Fusnik with us in the house. She has her master's in kinesiology, certs in osteopathic, neurokinetic, and exercise therapy, practices osteopathy. She's passionate about nutrition and hormones especially. So we're going to have one hell of a conversation. I can't wait. Welcome to the show, Stephanie.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. And I apologize to the listeners real quick. We're experiencing a little breakup here and there, so I'll clean up the audio as best I can, I promise. Steph, I know I just listed a bunch of different stuff, a bunch of different things that you've done throughout your educational career. Is there anything that I missed in there? Because I know you've done a lot.
Yeah, no, I have done a lot. I started personal training like as soon as I got into university, basically got my certs and got started at the university there. Got into exercise therapy, worked with like police officers and firefighters and doing the testing for like applicants to get into those programs. Worked with athletes, but I always loved chronic disease like osteoporosis, cardiovascular disease, all that kind of stuff, which led me to do my master's. And I focused on actually pediatrics. So I worked with kids that were born with half a heart. So doing like exercise physiology type testing on them. Then got a job working for the health region doing cardiac rehab, and then was running all the chronic disease exercise management programs in the area that I was like in charge of. And then was a personal training manager for a while at a gym, opened my own clinic for like osteopathy, and had like a clinic with like trainers and a studio and things like that. And then eventually closed that to do this full time because I love it so much. But yeah, so I've done a lot.
Awesome. Now for, I know there's like terminology can be different place to place. When it comes to osteopathy, osteopathy, like what exactly is that?
Yeah, so I'm a manual osteopathic therapist. So I didn't take the 4-year program. I did the 2-year program. I was able to challenge it since I used to do lots of like grad school teaching and stuff on physiology, biomechanics, all that kind of stuff. So I had all the coursework done. So the way I like to kind of explain it, it's kind of like a mix between massage therapy and chiropractics in a way. I personally don't like doing adjustments like manipulations that way. I focus mostly on like fascial work more than anything else, and then trigger points and stuff like that. Lots of things with like mobility movement. So I'll be holding things, you'll be pushing against me, things like that. It's a very, I don't know, it's just different than like your classic like massage therapy. And I find it works a lot better. And then I pair that with my neurokinetic therapy, where it's like you test different muscle groups to see what's inhibiting what, to really figure out like why something keeps becoming tight or painful, or mobility isn't good, or movement is off, or whatever that might be. But I don't do a ton of that anymore just because like nutrition takes up so much of my time. But I still dabble in it every now and then with like friends and family and stuff. And I don't know, I've always been so intrigued by the human body. There's so much to learn and understand. And I'm just a very curious person. So yeah,
it's the never ending rabbit hole. There's always something new to learn.
Always. Yeah. And as soon as you think you've like learned everything, I feel like that's when your career dies, because like there's always new stuff coming out, or like there's always opportunity to learn more. So yeah, I'm just one of those people that I think will be learning forever, to be honest.
Hey, you and me both. It's a fun journey. Now, I like how you said that like you don't really like go in that direction of the adjustments. And I kind of noticed like a trend, because I've got some friends that are chiropractors, and I know like I've listened to like Jordan Shallow and a bunch of other people, Aaron Kubal, and they're all like, they think adjustments are like a joke. Like they really don't do much other than acute pain management. So it's almost like a litmus test of like, do you want to just keep them coming back, or do you want to fix them? So it is always reassuring to hear that.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not like the best business model, because I'm like, you fix someone and they're gone. But I mean, it's like ethically, that's how you should be doing stuff, right? So
yeah, I mean, it's kind of like nutrition. Like we got the Weight Watchers, Optavia, like they just have people coming back because they're basically the nutrition equivalent of giving adjustments. And then nobody ever gets better.
100%. And there's no exit plan. There's no exit plan ever. Like, no, you gotta do this forever. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? No, like I'm not, no.
Exactly. Exactly. And everybody's got their flaws in their methodologies. Like we could go down that rabbit hole, but I definitely want to keep this more towards like the crowd that I know I work with a lot. I know you work with a lot. And that is the ladies that are 40 plus, 50, 60, that are in that magical time of their life where nothing makes sense and it's impossible to lose weight. So that
Yes.
being said, what are some things that you run into? Like, I know menopause is one of those things that you like go crazy on and you put out so much good information on it. What are like some common myths that people come to you with that you're like, well, that's not quite the case, and we could do this about it?
Yeah. So like the biggest ones are always like, I haven't changed anything and I'm gaining weight. And it's like, well, things are changing because like your hormones are changing. So your body is innately different now. So we've got to approach things a lot differently. But it's like, I'm doing cardio, it's not working. I'm eating low carb, it's not working. And I'm like, yeah, it's probably making things worse. You probably feel like garbage. And they're like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, so you should probably stop doing that. And that's not to say that like cardio won't help in some instances. And that's not to say that keto isn't appropriate for some people, but like for the women that I see who have been chronically dieting and like yo-yo dieting forever and eating in a low calorie state for a long time, it's not appropriate for them, especially if you start talking in like thyroid conditions and autoimmune conditions and things like that. Uh, it's, you have to be very careful. And I know a lot of people are very married to like nutritional things. Just like people are like very passionate about CrossFit. And if you say anything bad about CrossFit, they will like cut you. It's the same when people are like very pro keto and you
Yep.
tell them not to eat keto anymore. It's like a very emotional reaction. They're like, well, it worked for me or it worked for my aunt. I'm like, that's great, but you can't just tell everybody to do that because it's not appropriate for them and it can do so much more harm than good. And that's why it's so important to get assessed. And I think a lot of people are just so quick to want to hop on the bandwagon of whatever the latest thing is. And it's like, long term, you're not understanding what the consequences are or how you need to come out of that appropriately, or making sure you have the right support, or if that's even going to work for you. And I mean, we've turned people away from our program before where it's like, I don't think we can help you because you've got XYZ going on. I would refer you out to here. Or I don't know this is appropriate because what you really need to work on is XYZ. That's not really what we work on here. And then people are like, well, I want to work with you. I want to work with you. I'm like, ethically, I cannot, like, I will not take on someone if I do not think this will be beneficial for you. And unfortunately, with a lot of the fad diet things, people are just in it for the money, whether it's like, you know, the Optavia and all that stuff. Like
Yeah.
it's not, it's just not good. It's just not good.
But they've got a doctor on staff. Doesn't that mean that it's legit?
Now, how many doctors have you been to that have not helped you with your problems?
Exactly.
Just saying.
Exactly. I mean, I freaking date a doctor and she'll be the first one to say, yeah, we're not all great.
Yeah.
There's some
No, and
people that are in
it's
it for the wrong
true.
reasons.
100% the status and stuff like that. And it's very frustrating, very
Yeah,
frustrating. That's actually why I got out of
absolutely.
healthcare, was because it was just too many hoops to jump through to actually be able to help people. Like all the stuff that you have to like deal with. Like, I'm like, I just want to help people. And this is not the route that's like beneficial for me,
Yeah.
or the clients. So that's why I ended up actually going into private practice, was because of that, because it was not, yeah, it was not what I envisioned healthcare to be at all. So that's why I kind of steered away from it.
Yeah. And honestly, it seems like some of the best practitioners of anything out there are pretty much all private because they're like so sick of dealing with insurance and all the red
Mhm.
tape and all the BS. But yeah, that's another thing we could probably go way into, but we're gonna pull
Yeah.
back a little bit. So let's let's go into, I know like one of the big things that like I know my clients we spend so much time working on is sleep, because that's like the one
Mhm.
thing that so many people have trouble with. And it's another one of those things, it's like you can never stop learning enough, because I just heard a crazy statistic that like a third of the world, like in developed countries, don't meet their sleep requirement, their recommended sleep requirements. So clearly it's not just the US, it's like everywhere has an issue. What are some things that you do, that you have your clients do, that help them improve their sleep when they've got like in menopause or even peri or before perimenopause, that
Mhm.
seem to help?
I think it's really important to note that sleep's important, because if we don't sleep enough, like our cortisol levels just stay high all the time. And that leads to a whole schwack of issues, especially once you're in perimenopause and menopause. But some of the best things that you can do for sleep is just honestly make sure you're eating enough food in general. Like it is crazy the amount of women that we work with that as soon as we start feeding them enough, they're like, oh man, I haven't slept this good in forever. I'm like, yeah, because your body's finally out of fight or flight. Because it's almost like you are constantly playing defense. So your body can't actually rest because it's like waiting for tragedy to happen all of the time. The other thing that we do is like increasing carbs helps so much, and having a bedtime snack of half carb, half protein. You want to have like a higher fiber type carbohydrate before bed. So fruit typically isn't the best option because it digests too quickly, can lead to blood sugar spikes and drops right before bed. But having like a higher fiber carb snack helps so much before bed. So this can be like popcorn and pepper, like a turkey pepperoni stick. You can have oatmeal with some protein powder in it. Like things like that are super great. And the reason that this works is because when we eat carbohydrates, it lowers our cortisol levels. And it helps bring up our sleepy hormone melatonin. So it actually helps us fall asleep. And then the fiber and the protein will help regulate our blood sugars through the nighttime so that we're not waking up from blood sugar crashes and cortisol spikes. And people are like, what? I can eat past 8 p.m. I'm like, yes, you will not turn into a pumpkin. I promise. Like it's not, our body has no idea what time it is. It doesn't care. So like, it's not just because you're outside of like a feeding window with all your fasting stuff or whatever you're doing. Like it's crazy how people are like, oh my gosh, I had some yogurt and protein powder before bed. I have not slept that good in so long. And it's like, yeah, think about like Thanksgiving supper. You're like, oh man, I slept so good because of the turkey. I'm like, no, it's the buns, it's the potatoes, it's the stuffing. Like that's what put you to sleep and you slept so good. Have your carbs.
Yeah. It's crazy how that's another myth out there that like actually ended up being horrible advice, like the no carbs or no food after 6. And it's like, no, kind of the opposite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like, and that it also results in like your energy crashes pretty consistently. Like, how many women do you know who just have a salad with protein for lunch? I'm like, what? First of all, that's boring. If you told me I had to eat that for lunch all the time, I'd tell you to go shove it. Like, absolutely not. And
Yep.
like, I'm like, honestly, just have a couple crackers. Like, they're like, I don't know what to have. I'm like, have some potato. Like, just have a carb. Not be super complicated. Just eating your carbs in general, like regularly through the day, is going to just improve your cortisol levels as a whole. And you're going to have less energy crashes during the day. And it's also just going to help you sleep better. And like, I hate that we always demonize carbs because it does so much good for us, especially during perimenopause and menopause. Like, it's so, so essential.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, with the menopause stuff aside too, I mean, even if we're not in that stage of life, having those carbs for our workouts, just living our lives, it's like, who wants to live a carb-free life? Let's be real.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, people are like, I'm too scared to eat carbs. I'm like, are you joking? Like, so usually I'm like, what's the least scariest carb that you can eat? And I'll give them options of like fruit, rice, potatoes, quinoa, whatever it is, bread, pasta. And usually bread and pasta are the last things people are willing to eat, which I'm like, oh man, I could not live life without bread or pasta. But it's just
Yeah.
like, it's just crazy. People are like, well, I can't control myself around carbs. I'm like, it's because you never have them. Like once they're a regular staple in your diet, like the novelty wears off and you'll be fine. Like there's just like that little learning period and then you're good. I promise.
Exactly. We all have that like inner little kid with the cookie jar. Like if mom seals the cookies and says you can't have one, what's the first thought? Oh, I want one so bad.
Exactly.
So it definitely makes sense why people have so much trouble controlling themselves. And I don't know where along the line it became like a normal thing to hate on carbs, but I guess that's like what we're dealing with now. For some reason, some people just
Mhm.
hate carbs for God knows what reason. We're out of like legitimate ones.
Yeah, no, and like it was crazy. I actually had like someone comment on something once and they're like, stop telling women to eat carbs. You're just making fat and sitting on a fat wallet, keeping women fat. And I'm like, are you serious? Like you sound like you need carbs.
Yeah. It's probably coming from a carb-free person that doesn't have any
Yeah.
joy in their life. It's funny how those comments are the ones that stick. Those are the ones that
Yeah.
like you always remember.
Well, it's just like a moment of shock. I'm like, because at first, like my first thought was like, oh, I'm so sad for you. Like, so sad for you. Like you're missing out on so many good things in your life if you're not having carbs. So
Yeah.
many
And
things.
I genuinely wonder, do they just like straight up ignore the studies where like they put two groups together, low carb and high carb, and they both get the same results? Do they just ignore
Mhm.
that?
Yeah.
Makes no
Well, like
sense.
actually there was a couple studies done that showed that women, like when equated for like calorie intake and stuff like that, the group that had a lower carb diet actually had a reduced thyroid function from pre to post intervention, which is like pretty crazy, especially since that's something women already really struggle with, more predisposed to develop thyroid issues, especially when start going through perimenopause and menopause. And this is also just because like it helps bring those cortisol levels down. When cortisol is high, thyroid function decreases substantially. So it's just like that's why it's like, be careful who you're like telling to like eat lower carb, because if they have XYZ that can actually like really make things worse for them. So I'm always like very, very cautious of like trying
Mhm.
to figure out what people actually need. And like you shouldn't be taking complete things out of your diet anyways, unless A, you don't like them, like you don't like the way they taste, or they make you sick, really.
Yeah. It's like a system of levers. You never want one all the way down. It's just we'll bring one up, bring one down, and see what your sweet spot is. Because everybody's eventually
Exactly.
got one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like
Now,
food preferences and stuff too. So
exactly. And that's one thing that like all the research, all the science, like doesn't exactly always take into account. Like those ad libitum studies are usually like the ones that we're kind of leaning towards because that's how people actually eat.
mhm. Yeah, exactly.
But I know yourself, like you're on a journey right now, right? Like trying to get ready for the wedding.
Yeah, I'm on a fat loss phase right now. We're in like week 6, I think.
There we go.
And like I'm very thankful for Coach Carrie Ann, is one of my coaches, who's like holding me accountable during this. Because by week 3, I would have pieced out already. I'd have been like, done. So I'm very, very grateful for her.
I hope everybody took note of that coaches don't like this any more than you do. So we all need someone.
Ooh, yeah, we hate it. And like I was like, okay, because we're doing like a little break here because I'm going to Nashville soon. And I was like, okay, she's like, what do you want to do when you're in Nashville? I'm like, eat. And she's like, seriously? I'm like, I'm a foodie. Like, I'm like, I just want to make sure I have enough like allotted energy to be able to eat. That's what I want to do. So it's like we're in like a little bit of a push right now. And I was like, okay, I think I could drop more. She's like, nah. Last week you had one day where you just ate 400 calories more out of nowhere. Like, we're not dropping you down anymore. And I'm like, fine. Like, but it's nice to have a coach to tell you what to do. And then you have to think a little bit less. And again, just having someone accountable is very helpful, because there's days where Taylor's like, oh, do you want to sit in bed? I'm like, nah, I shouldn't. Like, I don't have enough like calories allotted. He's like, if you don't write it down, nobody knows. I'm like, you are not a good influence. Very supportive, but like accountability wise, not great. So if I was relying solely on him to help keep me accountable, things would not be going very well.
He's like the devil on your shoulder, like, you want it.
Yeah. Like in the morning, he's great. He'll like help like weigh out food and stuff. But then it's like, oh, do you want this? No one will know. And I'm like, oh man, great for support, terrible for accountability.
Hey, everybody's got their strengths. Now, in
Exactly.
in Nashville, is there anything specific you're really looking forward to? Like, I cannot wait to eat this specific thing.
Oh, someone sent me a list of like places to eat. This is funny because people are like, oh, you got, because everyone knows that I love food. Like, you got to eat here, you got to eat here. And I got a few donut places on my list that I like really want to go to because I'm such a donut fanatic.
Donuts,
So
okay.
there's a couple places that I really want to go check out. So I'm really excited. But I'm also just one of those people that would like walk around and be like, hey, that looks good, let's go in there. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, by all accounts, Nashville sounds like an incredible city to do that. And just
Mhm.
curious, have you ever been to New Orleans and gotten some beignets?
I have not, but
Ooh.
my goal is to go to all the states. Cause like I'm Canadian. So like my goal is to like go to all the states and like eat the food like that. That's literally the goal.
Yep, yep. Hey, it's not a bad goal at all. I mean,
No.
honestly, I got to get on your level. I'm in the States and I still have yet to see all the other ones. But yeah. um, when it comes to like food in general, like I know that we all have our like attachments, like we all have those things.
Mhm.
Do you have one that's like it holds a place in your heart that like you can't live without other than donuts?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I don't know. I'm honestly, this is gonna sound ridiculous, but probably chicken. Like I
Chicken?
I love chicken, but it's because like I enjoy cooking a lot. And I'm like a big fan of sauces. And with chicken, you can make so many different sauces, which is like something that I really, really like. Um, like pasta is good, bread is good. But like, I don't know. I don't know if there's like anything I can't live without because my diet is like pretty varied. Like I have a lot of different like food in my diet. Like I just I just like food. Like I
Yeah.
really just like food.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many that it's just like we can't live without it. But I
Mhm.
know like some people really get caught up in like their diets. They're like, I can't eat this, can't eat this, can't eat this. And it's like
Mhm.
the mental stress that and emotional stress sometimes that's
Big
tied
time.
into it. I mean, let alone our lifestyle habits, like the choices that we make play a gigantic role. So like when it comes to the mental side of things, do you have anything that you go to your clients and say, listen, I know that like we're checking all the boxes when it comes to diet, when it comes to sleep, like, but they mentally just need to get it together and figure it out. Is there
Mhm.
anything that like works really well that you've done?
Yeah, so we do a lot of like mindset work with clients for sure. Especially since like we have all these like nuanced ideas of like good food and bad food, which is like crazy to me. That we still like think in these dichotomies. And it's like, no, like you have some foods that are more nutritious, less nutritious, some that'll support your goals better, some that won't, but they all have a place in your diet. So trying to work around that stuff's really important. And I'm always like, where did you get this idea that this is bad? And if you eat this food, what is the worst thing that could happen? Like if you ate this donut right now, what is going to happen that's like so terrible? And then they think about it and they're like, well, I might get fat. I'm like, from one donut? No, that's not going to happen. So it's like just really trying to like figure out where these beliefs are coming from, whether it was from like stories growing up or seeing the way your parents ate or like magazines or school or whatever it was. And then the other thing that we work around a lot, we do like ideal self work. It's like, okay, who do you want to be? How are your relationships? How do you talk to yourself? What do you do in the morning? What do your routines look like? Like really help them visualize what this new version of them is going to look like. Because let's face it, the person that you are today is not the person that you're going to be at the end of this journey by any means. What's your relationship with food like? You don't want to be stressed out at events when you go out, things like that. And then we also work a lot on like growth mindset versus fixed mindset. And this is one of the things that we like talk about a ton. And I find a lot of people have breakthroughs with, and it's like, okay, so like, what are these like rules or these fixed mindsets that you have around this stuff? And how do we change these into like growth mindset stuff? So we do like a lot of stuff on that. Because as soon as you start like addressing, like you're not failing, like people are like, oh, I messed up, like I'm a failure. It's like, no, the only like it's a failure is if you don't learn from it. So like as long as you're like learning from each situation, you're never going to be perfect. That's not going to happen. Like myself as a nutrition coach going through a fat loss phase right now. Like yesterday I had 2 Rice Krispie squares. Should I have had those? Probably not, but I mean, I made it work, and then I had to just like really backload a ton of protein later because I messed up that way. But it's like, okay, I need to like pre-log what I'm eating for protein every day so that I know where things are missing. And then I just fill in the gaps otherwise. So it's like you're never always going to be perfect. And I think that's like the one thing a lot of people struggle with is like, if they're not doing it perfectly, then they think they're failing. It's like, no, like life is not like that. Like we
Yeah.
can't control everything. There's a lot that we can control, but like we just need to learn to let shit go. Like it's crazy. We don't give ourselves enough grace. And I find especially like women who are like, raising their kids and taking care of sick parents and all that kind of stuff. Like we give so much grace to other people and we give so much support to them. But then we're so freaking hard on ourselves because we had a donut. Like, are you kidding me? Like, I hope you enjoyed it. Like, I have had a woman message me and she's like, I'm going to bed and I'm going to have a cheesecake because I am so upset. I'm like, honestly, cheesecake on a Friday sounds pretty good. I'm not going to lie. And she like laughed about it. She's like, you never make me feel bad. And I'm like, why? What? That's not going to do you any good. Like, you're already being so hard on yourself. Like, just give yourself some grace. And if you want to have a freaking cheesecake one day, have some freaking cheesecake. Like, what flavor are you getting? Because I'm probably going to have to go get some now. Like, it's just
Yeah.
give yourself some compassion. Like, and I think that's just what it is. It's like we're so freaking hard and have these huge expectations that it's like, nah, like there's so much learning and growth that's going to happen. And so like nutrition honestly is like psychology for half of it. Like, yes, you want to learn like nutritional literacy and things like that, but you need to give yourself some grace. Like we're just so freaking hard on ourselves all the time. And I'm like, it's just food. Enjoy your food. It's meant to be enjoyed. If you slip up, that's okay. Let's just make a better choice next time with our next meal and move on. Like it's not a big
Yeah.
deal. It's one thing. That's it.
Yeah. And I think the key thing there is like, like when you had that point where a normal person would be like, oh, I messed up. you had the next steps and you knew
Mhm.
like how to fix it. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck when they're, and then that really drives the negative thoughts is like, oh my God, I messed up. Now I'm a total failure. It's not, oh, I know how to troubleshoot this.
Mhm.
So when it comes to like troubleshooting techniques, I know that you mentioned like you backloaded the protein that day and stuff like that. Are there any things that come up like on a fairly consistent basis with clients and you're like, oh, let's just do this?
Yeah, so a lot of things it's like, "Oh man, I got to the end of the day and I like have no calories left," or "Oh man, I got to the end of the day and I have so much left to eat," or "Oh man, I like not gonna hit my protein goal." Pre-tracking helps so much. And even myself, like the days that I don't like have a general idea of what I'm gonna eat, because like if I know I'm gonna have chicken breast, I'll like put okay, like probably 2.5 ounces or something like in my tracker just to give me like a ballpark as to where I am so I can see if I need to have protein earlier in the day. Like just guesstimating a little bit. And then once you get to that meal, actually like measuring stuff, like that helps so much and takes overwhelm out because then you're not panicking at the end of the day. So that's huge. Having enough protein earlier in the day, like have a huge ass breakfast. The days that I don't have a huge breakfast, like today I wasn't feeling super well, so I didn't have a big breakfast. I'm like, I'm gonna have to eat a huge lunch today to compensate, which sucks. But I was like, honestly, there was no way it was happening this morning. I was like, I just do not feel that great. My stomach is not happy, not doing this. So it's just like learning that kind of stuff. And then also it's like, okay, so I had like a slip up where like the scale jumped up by like 2 pounds. And I was like, okay, normally I would panic and be like, oh my gosh, what do I do? Restrict calories, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, I'm just going to continue on the course. I was trying to like troubleshoot what was going on. I'm like, you know what? I think I'm just dehydrated. So I like started chugging water for like the next day. And I was like, okay, scale went up again, not great. And then finally it was like my body let everything go. And then boom, it was down in 2 pounds a day later. So it was like learning to not panic and like really try and take inventory of all the things that could be influencing it. So it's like, did I have poor sleep? How's my hydration? Did I have more salt? Did I have more carbs than usual? And that's going to like cause some water retention. Or was my workout harder than usual? Because that's going to lead to some inflammation. Did I have like a food that like my stomach is like sensitive to? Like there's so many things. Like the first thought shouldn't be, oh my God, I gained fat. But that's not the way it should be. So I think just like the biggest thing is learning that there are so many things that can influence the scale too. So it's like, just stay on course. Don't over restrict. Don't try and overcompensate. Just try and keep going normally and everything will regulate itself out. It's just like, we're so freaking reactive. Like just as a society, we're so reactive that it's like, we have to talk ourselves off the ledge constantly.
Well, we do love catastrophizing everything.
Oh,
Like,
I'm such a catastrophizer. I told Taylor that the one day that he was being catastrophizer, and now he like points it out every time I'm doing it. I'm like, I hate you for learning the word that I taught you and using it against me. But I'm a catastrophizer big time. I'm like, okay, if this happens, I have to have this. And if this happens, I have to have this plan B. And if this happens, and it's like, Steph, just it might not even happen. Like, what are
yep,
you doing? Like, what are you
yep.
doing?
And especially like when it comes to business, I know like being like owners of our own, like we're probably kings and queens of making everything so much worse than it actually is. I've had to like say the mantra over and over again. Let's find out if it's a problem. Let's just find out. Fuck it. Let's see.
Well, it's so funny because like I tell this to clients all the time because like, for example, or even like people, because I like give people like an estimate of macros and stuff when they're like messaging me in DMs or whatever. And they're like, okay, so I do this and then I go into a fat loss phase. What do I drop by? I'm like, whoa, whoa, we're worrying about a problem you are not even remotely close to getting to yet. Let's just focus on this thing. And then once we get there, then we can talk about it. Like, yes, you want to know the certainty of like your journey, but like the longer the time frame I give you, the more uncertainty and changes that can happen in there. So let's just focus on like the next 6 to 8 weeks, try and achieve this, and then we'll talk again later. Like, but it is like we're so good at like panicking about stuff that hasn't even happened or isn't going to happen. And I feel like honestly, women are like, especially after having kids and stuff, like that's just how your brain works. You're just like constantly ready to like pre-prepared for any fire that might come up with like multiple fire extinguishers, but that's exhausting and we should not do that.
Yeah, I can't imagine like, I mean, we all do it, but I mean, just like mentally envisioning like always being on edge, always being ready to go. Like that just sounds exhausting thinking about it.
Yeah. And we don't realize that we do that to our bodies though. So it's like imagine how exhausting it would be just like thinking the world is going to end constantly, like how exhausting that is on your brain and your body when you are like in a calorie deficit and eating low calorie, and now your stress tolerance is reduced because your estrogen and progesterone have gone down, and you're not sleeping enough, and you're go 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 when you've got family stress and financial stress and all these things going on. Your body is constantly stuck in fight or flight, so your body is literally just waiting for the world to end. So like think of how exhausting it would be to like to actually think about that constantly. That's what you're doing to your body. That's why you're not losing weight, because your body is just like freaking out, playing defense the entire time, and just like waiting for the apocalypse to happen, basically. Like that's kind of the best way that I can like word it. So it's like, yeah, of course you're not going to lose weight, because like your body is like, nah, like we have to be prepared for when shit goes down, because it's going to go down. Like that's
Exactly.
literally what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of wild how we get into that negative spiral. And it really does come down to just having like that like checklist of things. Like I know our clients literally do have a checklist of like bad weigh-in reasons. It's like you
Mhm.
always need something to fall back on, because when left to our own devices, we're going to find a way to make it like way worse than it actually is.
Oh, and we're the best at self-sabotaging ourselves,
Oh yeah,
honestly. Like we can come up with any excuse. And like there's also the whole like external accountability versus internal accountability. Like having a coach is great for external accountability, but we have to develop like the tools for internal accountability to like not self-sabotage ourselves. And like so it is like there's so many things that come into like coaching and being successful, and like making sure that they're going to keep the weight off forever. It's like we have to learn to develop those skills, because like we can lead you to water, we can give you all the resources, all the help that you need, but like we can't make you do the things. So it's like you have to take some sort of ownership on that as well. And I think that's something that a lot of people panic with, because they don't want to take responsibility for stuff. But as soon as you realize that you have control over all of these things, like that's super empowering. And then you can realize that you can do anything. Like once you get rid of those self-limiting beliefs, like it's crazy what you can accomplish and realize, oh, I do have control over all of these things. It's not because of this person or that person or whatever it is. Like you can accomplish so much. And I think that's where things really change for me in terms of like my health and like grief and business and everything. It's like learning what's in your control. Like, yes, you can be emotional about stuff, and like it's crazy to not be emotional about things. But like once you realize that you have so much control, like that's like you can accomplish so much, like so much. It's crazy. Like you can take control of your circumstances. Like there's people who have come from poverty or abuse or whatever, and they're thriving because they are taking responsibility for what they can, controlling what they can. So it's like you can do it. It's just you have to believe in yourself. Like we can't want it more than you want it. And we can like push you, and we can like support you, and like give you all the like support and wonderful things, and really push you along the way. But like at the end of it, the program is going to be done eventually. So you need to develop those skills and like change your mindset that way. So I mean, it's all, there's so much psychological stuff that goes on with it. And to think you're going to get it in like 3 months is like absurd. Like
yeah,
that's not enough time to really like learn all the skills and practice those skills to make sure you actually like develop them appropriately.
exactly. And it is kind of wild how like people just jump in and they're like, "Oh, I just want to lose a little bit of fat," and it's like if it were that easy, it'd be so nice. Like I can't
Mhm.
even tell you, like I'm sure you've had conversations like this where somebody's like, "Well, don't you just give them a workout plan and like just like hop on the phone or whatever?" And it's like, I wish. Like
Yeah.
there is so like we're like part-time therapists, borderline.
Yes. Yes, we are. But it's
Because
true.
I'm
And like it takes a lot of
yeah,
time. It takes a lot of time.
it does. It does. And I like how you kind of went into the whole accountability of everything. Like I know one of the big personal shifts that happened with me that I definitely like go into with clients now is the difference between I can or I can't, and I want to and I don't want to. So
Mhm.
like when you're out having drinks or whatever, and old you would say, "Oh, I can't have any drinks. I can't," or like, "I can have drinks and I'm going to go crazy tonight." It switches to, I want to be fresh tomorrow, or I want to like have this drink and enjoy it and be mindful and then move on. So I think that like that's like a huge thing. Do you guys do like any of that sort of stuff?
hmm Yeah, like the one that I always use a lot is tendency. So like people are like, "Oh, I'm a people pleaser." And I'm like, "No, you have a tendency to people please." Because if you say I am, that tells you that it's like static. It can't change. It's concrete. Whereas you're like, "Oh, I have a tendency to." That means there is an opportunity for change. It's not a static thing. It might be part of your character now, but it doesn't have to be part of your character later. And I remember actually being like an NCI and talking with Mike, and I had been like bawling my eyes out because I was so stressed out and just lost my mom and was like losing all these things. And I forget what I had said. He's like, "You have a tendency to," and I was like, "What?" Like in tears. I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And like it just so like clicked in my head. And it's something that I tell people all the time. And it's funny because I'll talk to people and like they'll toss the word tendency and stuff like, "See, I was listening to you." And I'm like, "That's so great." But it's like just little tweaks in words can change so much about how you're going to approach things and your mindset around
Mhm.
stuff. So it's like, "Oh, I have a tendency, like, oh, I always overeat at nighttime." It's like, "Oh, I have a tendency to overeat at nighttime," or "I have a tendency to do this." And like, I think just, yeah, changing those words a little bit to give you more control over the situation is huge. And it's uncomfortable at first because it makes you realize you do have control and you've been making this choice for a very long time and people don't like that. But once you are willing to like accept that, it's crazy the love, like how quickly things change. Like it's like it honestly, it's like a light switch goes and it's like they're accomplishing things, they're doing great, they're setting boundaries, like it's amazing. So for me, it was very big for like people pleasing, or I'm like, "I'm a workaholic." And he's like, "No, no, you have a tendency to be a workaholic." I'm like, "Oh, that's like, that cut deep. This is a choice. Shoot."
Yeah, because it is a punch to the gut at first. You're just like, oh God, well, yeah, that is all on me. That's my fault. Damn it.
Yeah, when you realize that there's a choice and you've been making
Yeah,
that choice, it's not like something that like you didn't have like an option about. Like it sucks.
it
It was
really
very, I
does.
didn't like it at first. I was like, "Screw you, Mike." You just kind of ruined my day, but also set me free at the same time. And I'm not sure I love it.
Yeah, it's like that meme that keeps going around, like when what you think doing the inner work is like, and they're like walking through a field of daisies, and what it's actually like is like a toddler on the spinning circle, the spinning cups in Disneyland. Like, holy crap!
Yeah, no, honestly, it's wild. It's wild. But like, I think it's such an important part to like, it's just an important part of the process of like getting from point A to point B. Like a lot of people want to brush through that stuff. I'm like, nah, like if you don't do this part, your rate of success is going to decrease substantially. I can promise you that. Like it's uncomfortable and it sucks, but like we've seen some women who are like maybe not in the best relationships and stuff, and their partners weren't supportive, and now they're like setting boundaries. And she's like, "Yep, I just said this is what we're making. I'm not making a separate meal for you. If you want to eat something else, then you can make it yourself." I'm like, "Holy crap, like this is crazy." Like, or people now have all of a
Yeah.
sudden like the confidence to apply for different jobs and ask for a raise. And it's like, that's amazing. Like, and I think it's just a lot of like realizing you have so much control over your circumstances, that I think just we aren't really aware of until like it happens somewhere else in our life, and then we can apply it
Mhm.
literally anywhere else. So for some people it starts at nutrition and it goes everywhere else, or it starts somewhere else and then like bleeds into nutrition and things like that. But it's really cool to see.
Yeah, it is. Again, it is wild just to know, like, just to see all the mindset stuff that goes on, because we always get caught up in the X's and O's, like you got to eat this much protein, this much carbs, but it's like, it's the difference of knowing what we have to do and knowing why we do it.
hmm
And when we can fix the why, then the what kind of takes care of itself. Because I mean, let's be honest, most of us know we got to eat a little bit better. We need a couple more
Oh yeah.
veggies, some more protein. And for most people, that's going to do the job.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And it's like just figuring out that why is important. So like, okay, you want to lose weight. Why? You want to look better. Cool. It's deeper than that. What did you feel like when you were this weight last? What was your life like back then? What were your relationships like? What was like your day-to-day life like? Like those are the things that people are thinking about. Like it's not just I want to lose weight. That's like your first reaction, but it's always deeper than that. Or it's like, I don't want to end up like my parents did. I don't want to be frail. I don't want to die young. I don't want to like I want to be able to keep up with my grandkids or whatever it is. I still want to be able to travel and whatever. But like there's always something less than that. Like, yes, we all want to look great aesthetically, but there's always something deeper down more that we're like working towards. So,
Yep. And that's that scary place that like a lot of us really don't want to go.
mhm.
That it's like, well, if I don't think about it, it's not there, right?
Oh, 100%. And like, I think it's something like, so I always dressed like super, super conservatively. Like even in grad school and stuff, like I was like the grad student who would like wear like blazers and stuff like that. Like I was
Oh, you
always
were that
like,
person.
oh yeah, that's who I was. I was like, I'm gonna be taken seriously. And then going through therapy and stuff, I realized it was because one teacher in high school, and in high school, like I wore sweatpants and like baggy hoodies, like yeah, I'd wear shorts every now and then, but like, I mean, I didn't show stuff off by any means. And my math teacher had told my mom that I had to stop using my looks to get what I wanted. And I was like so upset and so rattled. So like for me, it became like I didn't even realize it was happening, but it was this mission of like, I never want anyone to give me something based on like my looks or like first glance assumption that way. It's like I want people to be like, that girl's smart. She's got her shit together. She's the best person for this job. Like that's what I want to be known for. I didn't realize it was like bleeding into like every other area of my life where it's like I want to be taken seriously and like all that kind of stuff. So I was dressing in a certain way to like portray that and stuff, which was like super wild. It's like now I'll wear like crop tops, which like I never used to do like in university or anything, or like never posted pictures of myself like in a swimsuit at the beach. Like I did not like that. And so it was just like my therapist going through all this stuff with me. I was like, oh man, like it's crazy how one comment can literally stick with you for your entire life. So I think that's why it's so important to like unpack where is this stuff coming from? Like, who are you trying to prove something to? And I'm like, I don't even remember his freaking name, but that stuff stuck with me forever. Like that's
Yep.
insane.
Yep. I know in high school, I got called out for wearing shirts that were too tight, but clearly I didn't get the memo. So just still do it.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. Like when you start unpacking things from like high school and like things parents might have said or whatever it is, it's like, man, that like that really changed the trajectory of like where I went, which is wild. So that's why I'm like, you really have to be careful like what you say to people. And like for me, it's very important to not be dismissive. Like if someone tells you
Mhm.
something, I'm like, especially a client, I'm like, they're not telling you something just to talk. Like there is some sort of significance that they felt it was relevant to bring it up to you. So you might think it's nothing, but like the last thing you should ever do is be dismissive because like they could be having a really bad day and this is like them trying to like open up something with you. And if you're dismissive, that might be the last straw for them to like not trust you or feel like they're totally alone or whatever it is. So even if it's just like, oh, can I have bread today? Like, don't be dismissive. Be like, yeah, totally. Why? What's going on? Like, maybe someone at work was telling them they shouldn't have carbs, or maybe someone made a comment that they were looking bigger or something like, like there, you never know what's happening. So like, to me, I'm like, the worst thing you can ever do is like dismiss someone's like trying to have a conversation with you because again, they're not telling you something just to talk. Like there's usually some sort of significance behind it. But
Yeah.
yeah, so work in progress.
Yeah. And it's definitely like that saying, like you, the more tough conversations you have, the further you get. And I think a lot of us are just scared to have those tough conversations
Mm.
where it's like, whether it's with ourselves, whether it's with our significant other, like we all can sense that there's that little something underneath the surface, but so many of us don't dig.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we'd rather just like be comfortable. And I'm like, oh man, but when you're uncomfortable, that's when stuff grows. Like I think of
Yep.
like some of the hardest times in my life, and I'm like, that's where like things really catapulted for me, or things really changed, or I started making decisions differently, or whatever it may be. And that's huge. Like the uncomfortable stuff, like it sucks, but like, oh, it's so worth it in the end. Like so worth it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And now, this is going to sound like a weird question, but are you into Vanderpump Rules?
I don't even know what that is.
Okay. It's one of those Bravo shows that I got sucked into
Uh,
because my girlfriend watches it. And I'm like, hey, if we're
okay.
spending time, I guess we could watch this, but whatever. And there's a couple on there that were together for 8 years. And then all of a sudden the guy cheats, they break up, big scandal. And I'm just like, and you see all these problems surfacing throughout the show. And you're just like, these are two totally different people. Like they have all these issues. And me and my girlfriend look at each other like, we had this stuff hammered out in like the first 6 months. How do you go 8 years without having these conversations? But that's how some people live. Like they
Mhm.
just put it off, put it off, put it off until it just blows up.
Yeah. Well, and that's like, honestly, it's how it is with Taylor and I. So we met, got engaged, and we're getting married very quickly. People are like, Steph, this is fast. And I'm like, yeah, I know. But like, then people like, they're like, have you talked about this? We're like, oh yeah, that was like date 3. And they're like, what? We're like, yeah, like we literally started talking early December, got engaged in March. I had like moved in like January, basically. And then, yeah, we're getting married in July. And it's like, but we talked all the stuff, like past triggers, like history, like literally anything. Cause like I've dealt with like abuse in my past and stuff. He is the only person that was ever like, okay, so if I like touch your shoulder or like grab your arm, is that gonna like set you off? And I was like, I have never had someone ask me that. And he's like, that's messed up. I'm like, yeah, I think I love you. It's basically how that went. Travel, kids, like all of the things we've talked about, everything. So it's like, yeah, it's, if you talk through things and hammer it out early, like then you're not wasting your time. And yeah, they can be uncomfortable conversations, but like in the end, it's so worth it. So worth it.
Yeah, exactly. And it just comes down to having those hard conversations. And I mean, that just applies to everything clearly that we've talked about today. It's like have the hard conversations with yourself, with your spouse, with anybody who's in your support system. And it's just only going to make you gain that clarity to make better decisions going forward.
100%. And
So if
like
there
having
are
those
any,
conversations, like will give you
Mhm.
control. Like it just makes you realize that, again, you can control so much more in your life than you think you can. And that will like, that stuff will set you free, honestly.
Yeah, it's going to be uncomfortable and it's going to feel scary as shit, but
Mm-hmm.
it feels better at the end than putting it off and having it blow up in your face.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Cause then you're just like nervous and walking on eggshells, and that's not good. Like just
No.
get done with.
Exactly, exactly. Now, I don't want to end on such a low note. So and luckily I always end with the same question for each guest, and it does tell us a whole lot about them. Basically tells us if we can trust you or not, now that we've gone a whole hour. And that question is, what's your favorite movie and why?
Oh, okay. This is hard because I've got 3. Um,
Okay, I'll
I'm going
allow
to,
it.
okay. So I love Despicable Me. Like I love that movie so much. It's funny. It's easy to watch. It's quotable. Like it's just so cute. I love it. It makes me happy. If you're in a bad mood, you can't watch that movie and not be in a good mood after.
Yeah, when you hear
Um,
it's so fluffy, it's just your whole day
Oh,
gets
I
better.
know. I love it. It's the best. It's the best. And then I love Coach Carter. That's like the other one that's
Mm,
like one that I love. And I think it's just like you put the hard work in and like you learn to, because like look at all those kids. They're in like coming from poverty, not the best places. They learn like discipline. They have to like focus on their schooling. Well, lots of those kids went and played like college ball. Like you can change your circumstances so much.
mhm.
So I love, 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 love that movie. Like hands down one of my favorites. And then I love Princess Bride because it's just it's a classic. How can you not love Princess Bride?
That's one of those that has to make its way back into the rotation. I only saw that one time because me and the rest of the football team did not want to read the book. So we just went to the library and watched it.
Yeah, no, I love, love the Princess Bride. And it's like, it's terrible. Like, it's so old. Like, it's not great. Like, the backgrounds and stuff. It's just a good movie.
It is. There's some old ones that stand the test of time.
Yeah.
That and like any Mel Brooks, like I'll watch any of his stuff.
Yeah.
But those are some solid choices. I really do respect the Coach Carter choice. That's one that I have not heard before,
Oh,
and
it's like
it's
my
such a
favorite.
gem.
Yeah, it's so good. I mean, it's like kind of ominous and stuff in some parts, but like, it's just, it's so good. Like, you watch that movie and you're just like, oh, I'm going to change the world. Like, that's literally
Yeah.
where your brain goes.
Yeah. I mean, talk about like taking a tough situation and like pushing through. Like, damn it, now I want to watch it again. Now I definitely want to carve out some time today to watch that. So, anybody listening, Coach Carter's worth a watch. I think it's still on Netflix.
Yeah. So good. So good.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, that's a much better note to end on. So we'll call it here before we go into more mindfulness talk and make everybody feel bad about themselves. So thank you so much, Steph, for coming on. I really do appreciate you stopping in, giving us your gems, the little nuggets of wisdom along the way. And I hope everybody listening picked up one or two things that they're going to start doing, whether that be the nighttime protein and carb snack or just having that tough conversation with themselves. Then I think this would have been a very good use of 1 hour of your time. So thank you, Steph, again. Really appreciate it. And do you have anything to tell everybody where to find you, where to see more of your stuff?
Yeah. So my socials are vitalityoet.stephanie. So that's TikTok and Instagram. And then you can listen to our podcast, the Metabolism and Menopause podcast. It just launched a couple of weeks ago. So it's fresh and exciting. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoy it.
Yeah, and she's got one hell of a professional setup now, thanks to Jared Hamilton.
Yes, thank you,
So
Jared.
definitely worth a listen. And if you guys don't want to go through the trouble of searching all of that, just look in the show notes. I'm putting it down there. So hope everybody has an amazing rest of their week. We'll see you next time. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode and you're a new listener, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss another episode. And if you're a returning listener, I would love your feedback. If you could take 2 seconds to just leave a quick review on iTunes or Spotify and rate the show, that would be greatly appreciated. So thank you in advance and have a great rest of your week.